Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, you're catching me on such a good day. We are revisiting the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. And I'm sitting down with John Witherspoon, attorney outside of DC. If you watched my video the other day, if you didn't watch it, go watch it. But if you watched my video the other day, he sat down and explained what Harry's settlement could mean and talked us through that. And he's wonderful and has such a great way of explaining things so that us non-lawyers can understand a lot of the legal processes. So again, thank you, John, for sitting down with me. Today, he goes into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, and he was there. He was in the courtroom. I'm so excited for you to watch this. I'm excited to hear all his behind the scenes information on this. He has tons, from what it was like when Johnny would walk in to what it was like when Amber would walk in, some of the rumblings he heard, a thing with Elaine, just so much to go into. So even if you weren't into the Johnny Depp trial of it all, I get it. You're still going to want to watch this one because John's such a good, he's just such a good explainer, and he makes things so interesting. It's interesting to hear how the process worked, how the jury would react to things, and we tie it back into how Amber and Meghan kind of resemble each other in some ways. So it's so much good stuff here. Now, the first part is all about John. I ask him questions about what kind of law he practices. We get to know him better. We get to know about his mom. His mom sounds incredible, by the way. I'm kind of obsessed with her. So I really want you to hear about her. She studied mathematics. She got a degree in mathematics a while ago. And I just think that is just the coolest. Imagine that. And yeah, she has a really interesting story. So I want you to hear about that. I want you to hear about John. I want you to hear about the Depp trial. And this is just part one. So part one is like an hour and 40 minutes. That's how long we talked about this and how far we got into this. Part two comes tomorrow with a whole bunch more information. So check back for that as well. Again, I can't say enough great things about John. John, thank you for being so generous with your time and for sitting down with me and taking all of the flocks questions. I'm kicking myself because I don't think he may honk at the end of tomorrow's. I can't remember. We talked about it, and I don't remember if we did. If not, I'll get him back on, and he'll honk at us again soon. But again, a huge thank you to John. A shout out to him. He does not have a YouTube channel. Trying to get him to start one. But the way we can support him is by checking out his Instagram page. So let's give him a follow. And again, I look forward to talking to him really soon. He keeps up with the Harry and Meghan of it all, and we'll get him back on soon to answer more of our questions. Let's get into this, and thank you guys so much for being here. I cannot wait to read your comments on this one. Let me know what you thought. Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. You're joining me on a really good day. Today I have a special guest with me, John Witherspoon. If you didn't see it, we did a separate video where we talk all about Harry and the court case and the settling, the dragon slayer that settled his case. But today I brought John back to talk to me, about everything, mostly about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, because a lot of us want to talk about that, as well as Meghan and Harry stuff, and just learn more about John. So without further ado, John, thank you so much for joining us.
You are so welcome. Thank you for inviting me to come back. After our first conversation, you could have said, forget it, never again, learn my lesson.
Oh, I forgot. I'm busy today. I can't do this.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I have a pressing nap that I need to take.
No, I could pull a Harry and Meghan and clear you out so I could take photos of myself. Right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Wow. My security, my 6 bodyguards or whatever will.
That's right. Yeah, they're actually just out of frame here. You just can't see. Hey, you guys stay over there. Okay, we're good. Right. No, I'm so glad you came back. Always a pleasure. It's just, you're wonderful. You break things down in such a way for us who aren't in the legal know to understand. So I appreciate that about you, and I'm excited to hear your take on all of this stuff. But first, I wanted to get to know you a little bit more. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you just a couple questions about you, so that way.
Sure.
If people aren't familiar, they can kind of get to know you more, as well as me. So tell me, John, what inspired you to pursue law?
Well, interesting question. I had some friends who, first of all, my dad is a lawyer.
Okay.
Second of all, I'm in Washington, D.C., which is, land of lawyers. I had some friends who are older than me, and people, my parents' acquaintances and so forth, who just always explained to me how powerful it is to have a law degree for any number of reasons. The most prominent one probably is just that it teaches you to be such a critical thinker when you're on your game. And not everybody's going to be 100% all the time, but when you're at your best, it really equips you with some incredibly powerful tools to analyze, to talk, through problems, to negotiate, do all kinds of things. And it really does change the way that you see the world and the way that you interact with the world. And it doesn't matter where I go, what I do, there's always something that I feel like I'm being made more powerful because I have a law degree and I'm, a member of the bar and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just really is an empowering thing. And the other thing too, if I can say so without sounding too high and mighty, it equips you with some very powerful tools to help other people as well. It's not just about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
People come to me and they have problems and ask for perspective and assistance, and how do I do this? And if you have those skills, you can you can really make a difference. I know everybody's talking about people who are trying to make a difference in the world. It's a very hot topic in Montecito and other places, but it does really allow you to, as I said, make a difference, help people in a tangible and rewarding way.
That's amazing. That's very cool. That's very cool skills to have. What area of law do you specialize in?
I don't really have a specialty area. Most of the legal work that I do just involves general, basic legal work. I don't litigate. I don't feel that's my forte.
Okay.
I probably should point out I also have an MBA, Master of Business Administration, and a lot of the work that I do is more of a consultative type of work, where I'm asked to come in and problem solve and, should we build this? Should we, try to solve this problem? Should we leave well enough alone? I mean, I'm speaking in very basic terms, but
Sure. Yeah.
as I said, that's kind of what you do on a sort of consultative type of a basis.
Gotcha. Do you prefer it like that though? Are you happy with what you're doing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
One of the interesting things is that in a lot of ways, the practice of law is very solitary.
Uh-huh.
When you're in law school, even, I mean, the idea of collaborating with your classmates on things is very, very far down the list, if it's on the list at all. And in the business community, it's exactly the opposite. When you're in graduate business school, they tell you right off the bat, if you're not able to collaborate with other people and you're not able to solve problems in a group and take the best ideas that everybody makes available, you're going to be absolutely miserable. So it's just a very interesting juxtaposition of the two ways of operating. And the other thing about it too is that lawyers by training and I think by habit tend to be relatively risk averse. So, if there's a risk that you're going to have a problem, and we kind of touched on this in the video about Harry's court case this morning too, like, you're going to need to make a serious calculation about exactly what the odds are of success here. And I'm guessing that his lawyers probably told him, you need to be pretty conservative on this because the downside is huge.
Mm-hmm.
By contrast, in the business community, it's very kind of cold and calculated and analytic. If the odds are 51-49 in your favor, you're probably going to proceed with that proposition. You'd certainly like to have better odds than 51% chance of success, but hey, there are decisions that are made like that all the time, all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, just the juxtaposition of those two schools of thought are it's very interesting to sort of have your foot in both communities.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's cool. Have there been any clients or cases that you've found to be particularly fulfilling or transformative for you?
That's a really interesting question. It's a really good question. It's actually a little harder to answer than you might think, and here's why.
You think, uh-huh.
Um, I always find it extremely rewarding when somebody looks at you and they say, "Thank you so much. I would not have been able, not only I would not have been able to do this without you, but in some cases, people even say," and this goes not only legally but also from a business consulting type of a perspective. People look at you and they say, "You're the only one who could have done this," and and that's not an exaggeration. There are problems that need to be solved that are so weird, um, and sometimes you just kind of get lucky, and people will say, "Gosh, we've asked other people to look at this. They've said they don't think they're up to it. What do you think?" Um, and there is unique and strange knowledge that you accumulate over the course of years, and sometimes that knowledge can be extremely, extremely helpful. I can give you one example,
Yeah.
um, and this was partially, I would say, professional, and partially because it was the right thing to do. I was involved peripherally in a situation that actually is going to be in the Washington Post, and I'll give you the link, Jen. You can put it in the comments so that people can find it. It's a very interesting article. I've already read it, but the article is about a young woman who was assaulted when she was between 11 and 14 years old, and I'll just say assaulted and let the
Yeah.
audience fill in the blank as to what that involved. And when she got into her 50s, she decided that she wanted to go to the police about this case,
Mhm.
and because it was criminal in nature. And she came to me and said, "What do you think about this? And how can we? Do you think this is doable?" And it was more like she was asking for friendly advice than legal
Yeah.
advice. But at the same time, I did some research for her, and she came back several times and said, "How in the world did you come up with that information?" And it becomes kind of detective work at a certain point
Uh-huh.
where you're locating people and looking up parts of the obscure parts of the law and all kinds of things. And it actually, again, I would encourage people to read the article, which we'll link. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it was very, very rewarding for this person who decided to speak up after decades. This was something that happened back in the 1980s, if you can
Mhm.
believe that. And it's a very, very interesting story, but my involvement in it was incredibly rewarding, not only because I was able to be helpful, but also because this person was a good friend of mine, and she really was looking for some, not only legal help, as I said, but also sort of some moral support. And I said, "Yeah, I would encourage you to do this." And I helped her to think through all the parts of the decision that she needed to make before she went to the police, and then after the police got involved. And um, that felt really good. It continues to feel really good.
I
So
I
those are the types of experiences
Mhm.
that you have as a lawyer when you really feel like that you're doing something that's not only worthwhile but also kind of special, and that really makes a difference in people's lives.
It sounds like it. That's incredible, and I just wanna say your friend sounds incredible too, so that's good for
She
her, good
is.
for you for
She is.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so what legacy do you hope to leave with your legal career? Is there something you have in mind for that?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, because you want to feel good about what you've done at the end of the day. You
Mhm.
want to feel like justice has been served. You want to feel like that, even say in a civil type of a dispute,
Yeah.
you want the outcome to be the right outcome. That doesn't always align. That's a difficult thing to say to a client
Mhm.
who's on the losing end of a legal altercation of
Yeah.
some sort. But if you read an opinion and you say, yeah, this was the right thing to do, the judge got it right, the jury got it right, that's the kind of thing you want to be able to look back and say, yeah, I accomplished something, and I helped. Again, it sounds very grandiose, but I helped the world be a better place.
That's
I
not
helped,
grandiose. I get what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I helped people solve their problems. I helped people who could not have helped themselves. They could not have navigated this maze of litigation and negotiation and everything else. Those are kinds of things I think, and that's just not me. That's not just me. That's any lawyer, I think, would tell
Yeah.
you the same thing.
I don't think that's grandiose at all. I think that's an incredible way to use what you've studied and the gifts you've been given. So I think that's, I mean, in a weird way, I say the same about this weird job I have. It's, if I can help somebody, then I'm doing good and I'm doing the right thing. So
Yeah.
I get it. It's not grandiose. I get it. I think that's incredible. So changing gears, I'm just particularly excited to ask you this question. It's just one that's on my mind, which is, if you could be an attorney on any case we've seen in the media, is there one in particular that you would pick to be an attorney on? Even if it's not your type of law that you practice, and I know you said you don't litigate, but I'm just curious, is there one that has held a fascination for you in that regard?
Yeah. It sounds like a very simple answer to give and a very obvious answer to give, but I've got to say the Johnny Depp case.
No, that's not simple or obvious. I wondered. I thought the same thing. Like, I'm not even in law, but I would pick that case. Yeah, tell me.
And part of the reason was that case loomed so much larger than life in terms of not just the legal back and forth and the things that everybody saw on TV from the courtroom. Some of us saw live in the courtroom in person.
We'll get into that. Yes.
Yeah, but just the circus atmosphere of the whole thing. It was so larger than life. More television cameras I remember on the day of the verdict, more television cameras than you can imagine out on the lawn of the courthouse. TV crews there from Germany and Italy and France and Australia. And it's like, wow. It's almost like the Olympics, a kind of an undertaking. And even Johnny's lawyers, who were very good and remarkably good. And as I've mentioned to you, Jen, Ben Chu is a friend, and an unbelievably strong performance from him and Camille Vasquez and Wayne Dennison and Shannon Curry and other people that they brought in. Just an absolutely masterful job. I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but so much of dealing with a trial like that is above and beyond the sort of basic stuff that happens of talking to witnesses and more than talking, examining witnesses, cross-examining, making motions, having bench conferences with the judge, all of those types of things. It was all of that, obviously, but the magnitude of the whole thing, just absolutely fascinating to be part of, and I think awe-inspiring. And I'm sure that and I've talked to Ben and talked to Wayne Dennison. They would, I'm sure, tell you the same thing. It was just a very, very, like a once-in-a-lifetime type of an undertaking.
I'm not involved in law. I just do this crazy job. And I can tell you the feeling I got just watching it. I would watch it every day and live stream it and talk through it. And I just, again, I get it. I get it. Like, just, you can feel it coming off the TV screen, if you will. It's just so fascinating and interesting, in the psychology and just seeing it all play out. And we'll get into it. I get it. I'd pick that same trial. I thought it was so interesting.
Yeah, it really, really was. And I think, as I said, I mean, even the people who were directly involved, the Ben Chus, the Wayne Dennisons, the Camilles, the Shannon Currys,
Dr. Spiegel.
I think they were. What's that?
Dr. Spiegel. Yes.
Yeah, poor Dr. Spiegel. Oh well.
We'll talk about him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Very interesting. And then so first of all, I I had asked you, and we can cut this out if you don't want to, but you have mentioned to me off mic, off camera, things about your mom. Do you mind if I ask you? I just think she sounds like the most interesting woman. Can you tell us just the teeniest bit? Tell everybody what your mom did. I think it's the coolest.
Sure. Well, and she'd be very flattered that you asked that question, and that if people aren't flipping off to a different channel right now, she'd be thrilled to know that people are actually willing to listen. My mom is a very interesting person. I think the relevant parts that people would be interested to know, and actually this I think has a nexus with the personalities of people like Amber, and in particular Meghan Markle. My mom was she grew up in a household where her parents ran a dry cleaning business. She had two sisters, and they lived above the dry cleaning store. So they just went down to go to work. And she went to college, and she got a degree in mathematics.
Wow.
And then she got a job at a place that at the time was called National Bureau of Standards, which is now known as NIST. If people are familiar with the Champlain Tower South condominium collapse down in Florida about 2 years ago, the people that came in to do the forensic analysis of the concrete and the steel and the foundation and all that kind of stuff, that's NIST. So that was the organization that my mom was working for. And I believe that she was involved in a department where they were doing some sort of experiments with radio frequencies and so forth. Anyway, the director of the lab that she was working in ended up moving the lab to Boulder, Colorado, because apparently there were some advantages to being outside of Washington, D.C. and away from all the radio stations and, airplanes and helicopters and everything else. So they moved to Boulder, Colorado, and my mom continued to work there. And then she moved from there to Berkeley, California. And this was in the early 1960s, incidentally, which is very funny at the time because that was sort of the ground zero for a lot of the social justice and social protest movements of the day. And she went to work for the University of California Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Now, interesting little bit of trivia. If you watch the movie Oppenheimer, there was a point after they had gotten the lab set up in Los Alamos. Oppenheimer was sort of in competition, but also was kind of a colleague of a guy named Edward Teller. Well, Edward Teller was the guy who ran the lab where my mom worked. And in fact, there's kind of a funny story in our family because apparently my mom was very friendly with Edward Teller's secretary. And apparently she was standing at this woman's desk one day and they were kind of just chit-chatting as you do in an office environment. And they were talking about wanting to go see the opera in San Francisco. And apparently Edward Teller was sitting at his desk and the door was open and he kind of stuck his head around the door frame and said, I really like the opera, but I don't have any friends that like to go to the opera. If you guys are going to the opera, can I come along? Oh. And so that's kind of a running joke in my family is that my mom is probably one of the few people in the world who went to the opera with Edward Teller. And so it's like I said, that's just sort of a running joke. And again, if you go back and watch Oppenheimer, you'll see the Edward Teller character. Anyway, what they were doing, without going too into detail, they were basically working on nuclear weapons and doing some really, really high-powered stuff, just like Oppenheimer was out in the desert in Los Alamos. Anyway, she ended up meeting my dad, and she came back to Washington and got married and so forth. But the interesting thing, and this is the kind of Amber Heard, Meghan Markle angle of it, was that when I came along, my mom got very involved in driving carpool and taking me to sports events and to the swimming pool and doing music lessons and all that kind of stuff that a lot of parents do. And the interesting thing was that there were people saying to her, why are you wasting your time and your talents and your career and your education driving carpool and taking your kid back and forth to the swimming pool for swim practice for the swim team and so forth? And my mom never really came out and said it, but I think the way to characterize her mindset was, hey, listen, I've been building nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
I have nothing to apologize to you for.
that's right.
I'm not being unfulfilled as a woman, as a girl boss, whatever. I've already done that, and I'm not going to say in any way, shape, or form that I'm compromising my skills or anything like that, because I've done all that, and I really feel like it's important for me to raise my kid. And so that's and she was one of those moms too that kind of had control of the entire neighborhood. She knew who was, don't hang out with that kid. Oh yeah, fine. You want to go over to that guy's house? Fine, not a problem. So that's just the way that she was. And it's just interesting. We were talking this morning about Meghan Markle's motivations and how large and in charge she seems to be. And she has this kind of edge to her voice, and she's walking around or stomping around, allegedly barking orders at people and bringing them to tears.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's just interesting, and I'm happy to tell that story because I do think it has some relevance. There's a lot of Kool-Aid that a lot of people are drinking, and don't get me wrong, if you want to drink the Kool-Aid and be what you want to be, I think my mom would be the first person to say, yeah, more power to you. But at the same time, it's kind of like, again, I have nothing to apologize for, as I've said. And,
I just think it sounds like such a cool lady. I really do.
Yeah. And she ran a really tight ship. We always used to joke that if she had been a police detective, all the criminals would have been locked up, and nobody else would have committed any crimes because they would know that she would come after them. I mean, that's just the kind of involvement that she had in everything that was going on. So again, in contrast to other people that you see in the media, their level of involvement with their kids, I don't like the term girl boss or boss babe, whatever it is. It's kind of derogatory, but at the same time, I find it
condescending. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around. And I'll just say this too, because this always kind of comes up in that same context. I've had the enormous privilege to work directly with some very powerful women in Washington, D.C., and some very people in high positions and doing some very important stuff. And hardly any of them, I mean, I just marvel when I hear people say, I had to go into therapy because of the way I was treated, or this person is a demon, or whatever the characterization is, and this person does nothing but stomp around and yell at people all day long. I don't know any truly highly successful women, and again, I've had very close proximity to several of them. They're demanding, of course. They want results. If you mess it up, they're going to tell you about it and ask you not to do it again. But they are otherwise wonderful people, hilarious, love to tell a joke. Don't hesitate to have a glass. Hey, come in. Are you leaving right now? Come in here. I'm having a glass of wine. Why don't you join me? It's again, it's just remarkable. I think we've really lost track of I think some people misunderstand what it means to be successful. And this is not just exclusive to, I know we're talking about my mom,
Oh,
and I've
no.
mentioned a couple of women. So
Yeah, across
this
the
is a
board.
universal thing.
Yeah.
I've been around and worked around some very, very high powered men as well.
Mhm.
Same thing. They are not nasty, obnoxious, demanding.
That's not
They
how you
don't,
get results out of people.
no, it's really not. It's
Yeah.
totally not. It's
Yeah.
totally not. And I think the people that are trying to do it in a way that is, through force,
Mhm.
it's you can get behind a horse all you want and push, and the horse is not going to move very much. If you get in front of the horse and you lead the horse, people will follow you to the ends of the earth. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can still hear in my head people saying to me, I know you've already been here 9 hours or 10 hours today. This is totally beyond your scope of responsibility, but I'm desperate for help on this.
Mhm.
Can you give me a hand? Blah, 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 blah. And, don't come in until 10 or 11 tomorrow morning. I'm thrilled to do it. And everybody else
Absolutely.
was too.
Mhm.
It's not a secret.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I think you make such a good point, and you're not gonna get the best out of people by yelling at them, demanding things, and being a tyrant. I totally agree, and the way you just explained it makes so much more sense. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's
And
just
you know what? That's even true in the military. I know some people who are military officers. I know one guy who's a captain in the Navy.
Mhm.
People would do anything for that guy. He
Yeah.
is so funny. He is so nice. Um, he I mean, he's the kind of person that you would say, boy, I have no idea why I'm doing this, but
Mhm.
Captain so and so told me to do it, and so I'm going to do it because I
Yes,
trust him. I like him.
that's
I
great.
want the mission to succeed.
Mhm.
Everybody else is on board. We're going to get this done.
I
It's just remarkable. And in business school they talk about that, all that stuff in terms of what they call OBHRM, organizational um, organizational behavior and management.
Oh,
Um, OBHRM. Is that it? Organizational behavior and human resource management, OBHRM. That's what it is.
gosh.
And it's all about the science of being a leader and getting people to do what you want and not quit.
Yeah.
And you don't need to have NDAs in place
No.
when the atmosphere is such that you would think, why would I care if anybody went and talked to Radar Online or Newsweek or any of
Exactly.
that stuff?
If there's
So
nothing to hide, you're right, absolutely.
yes,
And I think it goes back to our conversation in the last video about checkers versus chess. You have to think a couple moves ahead, and I just think it's a simple person. It's a childlike move. I'm not getting my way, so I'm going to shout versus I'm going to calmly explain this is what I'm looking for. How can we work together to achieve that? So I think it shows the mindset that they pretty much live in my opinion, it seems.
right, right. And even and it doesn't even have to involve high powered stuff. I mean,
No.
there were several times where my boss would come to me and say, you know what? I know you're in the middle of 16 other things, but I flew in from Los Angeles or San Francisco last night, and I did not have the strength to stand at the luggage carousel at 11 o'clock at night and pick up my luggage. It's in the United Airlines baggage office out at Dulles. Would you mind get a car out of the motor pool, go out to Dulles Airport, here's the claim check, and it's like, I'm thrilled to do that for you.
That's cool. Uh-huh.
Because it's a night, and of course, it's like, okay, it's a nice day out, and I'm thrilled to have, instead of get up from my desk and go out to the airport, and it's like, I totally get it. I totally get it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
again, this is so above and beyond. I'm almost embarrassed to ask you for this.
Yes.
Would you mind?
I would really appreciate it. Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Uh-huh.
yes.
Yeah,
So those
absolutely.
types of people are out there, and we've
Yeah.
all seen them in action. And it's a shame when other people can't figure out crack the code to
Mhm.
manage in that way.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on. Okay, so you've worked with other YouTubers and help answer questions, legal questions and stuff. What got you into that? How'd you get your start with that?
You know, it was really funny. It actually starts all the way back with Johnny Depp.
Okay.
I was kind of late to the party in terms of cutting the cord, so to speak, and relying on YouTube and all the other streaming services to get information and to get entertainment and so forth. I had been watching all the Umbrella Guy and Yellow Flash and Andy Signore on Popcorn Planet and all these other YouTubers that were very, very vested in covering the Johnny Depp trial. And in particular, I had been watching. What's that?
I was teasing. I said this girl was, but I was very small at that point, so you probably were.
Well, right. But anyway, I had been watching Andy Signore's channel, and I started liking it, and so I watched as obviously the Depp trial ended, and I was still watching him, and then the whole business with Harry and Meghan came around, and there was a day, as most people I'm sure are aware, there was a court hearing in Washington D.C. having to do with Harry's visa and the challenge that the Heritage Foundation had put out to the status of Harry's visa. And Andy, at the end of one of his streams one day, just said, "Oh, by the way, if there's anybody in Washington that feels like sitting in on this hearing and then coming out and giving us a report, shoot me an email and we'll work something out." So anyway, one thing led to another. I did send him an email. He wrote back. He was very, very excited. Had a live stream with, oh my gosh, I think there were over 10,000 people on the stream. The viewership for that particular, by the time it was all said and done, I think there were, close to 200,000 views on that particular stream.
Incredible.
So it was very, very interesting. And then he invited me back, and he works with Steph the Altar Nerd, who's over in York in the UK. And so I started working with her a little bit and just providing some commentary on, again, the goings on with Harry and Meghan. And then also Andy is also covering the situation with P. Diddy and a couple of other people. So I got involved in that sort of on a peripheral basis. And so that's how I got involved in the YouTube community. It's been really, really interesting. I think 20 years from now, we're going to look back and think about YouTube in 2025 and say, oh my gosh, we had no idea what was coming down the pipeline. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see where it goes.
We had no idea RHR Jen was just going to break the internet. That's right.
Absolutely. We never thought we'd actually see RHR Jen. We never thought we'd know that she apparently likes the color blue.
Why would you say that?
Just a lucky guess.
On a funny note, it's funny you bring that up. You're probably one of the first ones to just let me know that I was on camera. I didn't realize I was on camera. You're one of the ones that shot me an email and said, "I got to see you in the corner." I was like, "You did what?"
Yeah, we were on with Trevor, I believe.
Yeah, that was this. It's just funny.
Yeah, that was really funny. And on that day, I didn't think there was anything wrong. I just thought, oh, that's cool. She's finally pulled the ripcord, and because you'd been showing like, okay, this part of your face, and then this part of your face, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like if we could get all these pictures together, we could see what Jen looks like.
Somebody used AI to make my face, which was pretty close to using the pieces.
Really?
Yeah.
Funny. That's great.
Yeah. But no, it's just funny. I didn't know that I had done that. And I saw your email. I was like, wait, what? I'm on camera. Right. And then I think I wrote you, "Oh my God."
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. That was funny.
Choice words in that, but yes, absolutely. But let's see. Have you thought about starting a channel? And I asked you this before, but I'm gonna pretend like I didn't. Have you thought about starting a channel, John? I know you have a personal channel, but have you thought about starting a YouTube channel? Because I do love your take on things, and I find you a lot of fun to listen to. Is that something that interests you in the future, you think?
I have. The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. I have kind of one of the problems is obviously I've got other things going on, and I know how hard you work and everybody else. I mean, people that are really legitimate YouTubers. I mean, you're pumping out 2 and 3 videos a day, which I'm not sure I would have the bandwidth or the energy to do. I will say I have actually prepared some content. I did a walk around the tidal basin last year
That's cool.
when the cherry blossoms were out, which was pretty cool. I have a very, very eclectic and diverse set of interests. That's another problem. I always feel like I
Mhm.
would have a hard time narrowing something down that I could focus on that would sort of keep people's attention. But I've done some kind of test runs of driving tours of Washington, D.C., because the architecture is amazing. There's some really, really cool. I just got a book the other day, which I've been fascinated by, talking about the historic architecture of buildings in Washington, D.C. I also have a book about historic apartment buildings in Washington,
Oh,
D.C. There's some old Art Deco apartment buildings and other structures, low low height housing and 12 or 13-story buildings that I just need to put it all together and make it palatable in a way that people would be willing to watch it. People can put comments if they want.
yeah.
If any or all of that sounds of interest, yeah, leave a note in the comments and it'll kind of spur me on. So
I'm gonna leave a note
yes,
in the comment. Do it, do it.
yeah,
That's good.
right,
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely think you should, and I said this before, but I meant it when I announced that I was gonna be talking to you, and I was excited and, just getting to know you and we'd be talking over the depth. I had a big response. A lot of people were very excited. They were already familiar with you from the other channels, and then, we're excited that you're coming on. So you got this. I think if it's something you wanna do, and don't feel pressured. This is my job like full time. So you've got other stuff going on, so just
yeah.
sprinkle them out as you can, and people will watch. So I think it's
Okay,
good.
fair
Yeah,
enough.
I think as long as you put goose somewhere in the title, then you're good.
Yeah, right, right. Of course,
John
hashtag
Winter
goose.
Goose. Yeah.
Right, right.
By the way, did you notice my name today?
Jen
Jen
Depp,
Depp.
Jenny
That's
Depp.
right.
Yes,
No, 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 no.
I
That's
know
what
you
I
don't
was
like
trying to
Jenny.
avoid. I know. So I stuck with Jen Depp. That's good. I know Johnny Depp would make more sense contextually. No, I don't like it.
Right.
But you brought up Depp, so this is gonna be you ready to do this thing? This is the
Yeah,
part I'm
absolutely.
excited about. All right, let's talk Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. What got you
Yeah.
interested in the case?
It was very strange. There had been an article written about it in the newspaper.
Mhm.
Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, Hollywood, all the kind of weirdness. All of a sudden, it's in Fairfax County, Virginia. Fairfax County is one of the counties that's on the Potomac River. It's immediately adjacent to Washington, D.C., and it's on the border between Virginia and Maryland, and
Mhm.
so it's not far away. And it was actually funny because at the time the article came out, I remember seeing the article, and I just sort of thought, okay, well, I know who Johnny Depp is, and it's kind of interesting that he's having this trial right kind of in the neighborhood. Anyway, and incidentally, if you look at some of the video of the early days of the Depp trial, there's hardly anybody in the courtroom, which
Mhm.
is absolutely laughable given the way
Yeah.
things, erupted into a circus at the
Uh-huh.
at the end. Anyway, I had posted something, a rude comment on Facebook, where I had basically said, "I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm having trouble concentrating on my work. I've decided that the problem is that Amber Heard is basically within a 10-mile radius of where I am." And I started getting these comments from friends, especially in particular some people in Los Angeles who I know, and they basically said, "Are you nuts? Have you been there? What
Uh-huh.
run, don't walk to get
Yeah.
over to the courthouse." And I sort of thought, all right, that's funny. I'll take it or leave it. Then I was watching the trial one day, and as people may recall, or I was watching a recap of the trial, something on, it was on, I know it was on YouTube. There was the infamous testimony about some unpleasant material that was left on Johnny Depp's bed because Amber Heard was upset that Johnny Depp was late to her birthday party, I believe it was, because he was having apparently some financial problems that he was not aware of, and there had been sort of an emergency meeting called where some of his team had said, look, you got to address this immediately because you're spending money faster than it's coming in. You're going to have a real problem. Anyway, so he was in that meeting. She didn't like it because it was her birthday. And I get it. It was her birthday. I would feel upset too if my husband or my wife said they were going to be at my birthday party and I'm sitting there, where are they? Hello. Anyway, after that happened, I was watching a recap of the trial, and you have to kind of understand the layout of the courthouse. Got the front of the court. The courthouse is basically this giant rectangular building, and you've got the public side, and then on the back side, you have what they call a sally port, which is an area where there's a high wall and some high fences and so forth. And people saw this on TV, and it's set up that way so that you can bring prisoners in and out to go to trial. Anyway, I was watching this recap. Amber Heard walked out the back door of the courthouse in front of the TV cameras, and all of a sudden, there was this screaming from what sounded like two teenage girls screaming at the top of their lungs, and it was like they were being attacked or something. It was like this life or death kind of scream, and they were screaming, Amber, Amber, why did you poop in the bed? Amber, Amber, why did you poop in the bed? Amber, why did you do it? Why? Anyway, I heard that, and I thought, I got to get over there. This is too good to miss. This is turning into a legitimate source of high entertainment, circus hilarity. I've got to get myself involved. So anyway, I started going over there, and I had been warned that there were going to be some lines. This was maybe halfway through the trial or so, and there were going to be some lines. So I think the first night I went over there, I think I got in line at about 10 o'clock. And when you get in line at 10 o'clock at night, that is so that you can spend the night on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse. Thank goodness there was a large canopy overhead. But they handed out wristbands, first come, first serve, at 7 a.m. the next morning. By the time it was all said and done, you had to be in line at 6 or 7 p.m. the night before to literally spend,
Oh my God.
12 or 13 or 14 hours in line to be able to get yourself a wristband the next morning. And we can go into a little bit. I mean, the mechanics of the whole thing were absolutely fascinating as well. I don't know if you want me to go into that now.
I was going to ask, that's my next question. So please,
Okay.
if you feel like it, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it became such an interesting experience from the sort of sociological aspects, because when the lines and the crowds really started to pick up, Chief Judge Azcarate, who is the Depp trial judge, was also the chief judge of the entire court complex. And I think the sheriff's deputies went to her and said, this is totally out of control outside. We got to do something because there are people sitting here at 6 o'clock at night waiting for 7 o'clock the next morning to get a wristband, and it's out of control. And there were just problems. It doesn't, you get 50 people or 100 people together in a group, there's always going to be a couple of idiots that are going to screw it up for everybody else. Well, the idiots reared their heads, and the sheriff's deputies said, we can't take this anymore. So anyway, the judge said, she put out a memo, and there were signs all around the court complex that said, do not get in line. The court complex is closed and off limits until I think it was, I don't know if it was midnight or 2 a.m, at which point you were allowed to get in line.
Okay.
And one of the downsides of being a lawyer and a member of the bar is that when a judge says, don't get caught on the court grounds until 2 a.m, well, you have a little bit more to lose than the average person, because there's nothing worse than getting a phone call or a letter from the people called the Bar Council. Bar Council is basically the enforcement group in any state bar. I did not want a letter from any Bar Council because the sheriff's deputies in Fairfax, Virginia had dropped the dime on me over in Maryland. So the way that they got around, and other people felt the same way, and other people just thought, okay, well, she said, not until 2 a.m, we're going to respect that.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was people sort of self-organized, and there was this crazy system that was worked out where if you were a good citizen among the people who had been going into the trial, meaning you hadn't caused problems, you hadn't gotten in shouting matches in the middle of the night and woken everybody up and everything. If you were a good person, you were let in on basically the secret location of a woman who ought to be sainted, incidentally, or knighted, or what, not knighted, but you get the point.
Yes.
There was a system that was worked out where the word would get passed around all the good citizens, and it was basically, all right, if you show up here at 8 o'clock, go into the parking garage, go up to the second level, area B, space number 79. There'll be a gray Honda with Virginia license plates. And this woman's going to be sitting in that gray Honda. Go and speak with her, and she's going to give you a little piece of duct tape, and she's going to take a Sharpie and write a number on that piece of duct tape. And then at 2 o'clock, when we're actually genuinely allowed to be in line, that's the order that we're going to use to line up in. So by the way, once you've got your little sliver of duct tape with a number written on it, well, you can go down the street and have a beer or get a sandwich or whatever you want to do. But at 2 o'clock, you need to be back here to get in line with your little secret number. So anyway, it was just very, very interesting, because there were people that were not told. And this location, by the way, changed. It was not always parking space 79. It was sometimes it was, okay, well, instead of the second level, it's going to be the fourth level, and go to the blue area. And, so there was this whole scheme worked out, and there were people that were excluded from that. They couldn't figure out why. It's like, where are people getting all these numbers on the duct tape? It was really funny. So the other thing about it was that there were a couple of nights when it was absolutely chaotic, and people were sort of sneaking around the outside of the courthouse in the bushes trying to get lined up. And I thought, this is when I got my law license, the last thing in the world that I ever thought I would be doing would be sneaking around in the bushes, in the mud, outside of the courthouse to try and get in. The other thing that was so funny was that it was very muddy, and some people said, okay, well, you've got a suit and tie on. Why are you wearing hiking boots? And I said, because I can't get any traction when I have to run in the mud if I'm wearing my normal court appropriate shoes. I've got to have, I can't risk losing my footing and not being able to get in line. So just crazy stuff like that. Anyway, at 7 a.m., they would start handing out the wristbands, and then you could get into the courthouse and go through security, and then go up to, I believe it was courtroom 55, which is on the top floor. And then you would line up in the hallway, and they would let people in. And there were only 100 seats.
Okay.
That's part of what was amazing. Only 100 seats. So you really had to try hard to get in there.
That's incredible. Wow. It reminds me of like a speakeasy or something, where you have to know the secret word to get in, and the secret.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that just developed organically, again, the sort of the sociological well, we don't want that guy because he's a pain in the neck. So,
Yeah.
don't let him in on the location of the woman with the duct tape. So,
That's fascinating, completely fascinating. How many, days roughly do you think you sat in on?
well, that's an interesting question. There were people that went every day,
Mhm.
and God bless them.
It would
It
be a
was
lot. It would be a lot, yeah.
And it was exhausting. It was exhausting. I mean, because you're kind of up for 24 hours. You're not getting good sleep when you're sitting there in a beach chair out on the
Yeah.
sidewalk outside the courthouse, because there's always the garbage truck would come by, the big mail truck would come by. I'll tell you one story that was actually really funny. I was sitting there in the middle of the night one night, again in a beach chair, and I kind of had a pillow, and I was sort of just kind of hunched over on this pillow, and I had a blanket around me and so forth. Thank goodness this was in the summertime, not, I mean, it's like I woke up here this morning, it's 9 degrees, which is basically minus, I think, 12
Uh-huh.
Celsius for people
Mm.
in Europe or wherever. Um, I woke up in the middle of the night. Like I said, I wasn't sleeping that well, and I kept hearing this sound like, you know what it sounds like when somebody's sharpening a knife and it's this
Yeah.
chink, 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 chink,
Yeah,
chink,
yeah,
chink,
uh-huh.
like they do at a restaurant, fancy restaurant or something like that. I kept hearing this noise. I thought, what in the world is that? That is just so out of place. This is like 3 a.m.
Mhm.
I looked around. There was some people, I don't know, 30 feet away, maybe.
Uh-huh.
They had brought in a laptop, big screen, and they were sitting around it in a semicircle. They had decided that they were going to watch their way through all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh, so they're sword fighting or whatnot?
Yes. So the noise that I was hearing was they're having a sword fight on the deck of the ship or something like that. And
Oh,
I
that's
just thought,
funny.
you can't be mad at those guys because they're having a good time. They're into it. Um, fine. I'll stick my headphones in a little bit farther and hope that it doesn't bother me again. There
Yeah.
were also, I mean, since we're on the topic of weirdness outside the courthouse,
Uh-huh.
there was the day that Johnny Depp was asked if he would work for Disney again and make another Pirates movie. And he
Mhm.
said, I would not do it for, I think it was $30 million and a
Mhm.
million alpacas.
Yes.
And he was asked about that. I think Ben Rottenborn asked him about that. And he was like, yeah, that's true. That's totally true.
Mhm.
So the next day, outside the courthouse,
Remember.
what are those goofy looking things? Oh, those are alpacas. This woman apparently she raises alpacas. She had put the alpacas she had a minivan, put the
Oh my
alpaca.
god.
I said, how did you get here with the Oh, they like to ride. They have a good time. I put them in the back seat of the minivan.
Uh-huh.
Okay, fine. They
Wow.
were decked out. They had little pirate hats on. They had, I mean, it was unbelievable.
That's
And so again, that just tells you that the level of absurdity. And I think Johnny Depp even made a comment about it one day. He was like, "It looks like it's Alpaca Day." And he made
That's
he
funny.
always had something funny to say too. When
Yeah.
he was walking in and out of the courtroom, he always first the one thing that was really funny was that he had this beautiful black Cadillac Escalade,
Mhm.
and it was being driven, of course. But he arrived at the back of the courthouse one day, and he always had this music blasting, either Bob Marley or something or other. I mean, he would open the back door, and it's like, wow, the music is so loud.
Mm.
When you're Johnny Depp and you're paying the bill, you can play whatever music you
Sure.
want
Mhm.
in your, you know, chauffeur-driven car
Uh-huh.
and play it as loud as you want. Um, but he would always get out and quip something, which were some of them were really funny. There was one day when the crowds were really huge outside on the street, outside the gates of the Sallyport, and people were cheering like crazy. And he turned to the TV camera and he goes, "I bought them all waffles. I made waffles for all of them this morning. That's why they're so excited."
That's fun.
There was also a day, I'm just remembering things as we're talking. There was a day when this little small van pulled up, and these two women got out, and they had these big, you know how when you go to a sporting event, a baseball game or something, people walk around with these things and they have like hot dogs in them or whatever they're selling. These two women got out, and this was right in the middle of, this is like 7:15. The wristband operation was kind of in full swing. And these two women said, "Who would like a breakfast burrito?" And everybody was like, "Oh my God, our prayers have been answered." And it was from some restaurant fairly near the courthouse. And they were doing this as a publicity stunt. But anyway, it was absolutely hilarious because everybody in the line was just like, "Oh, we're starving. We are starving. We kill for a breakfast burrito." And even the sheriff's deputies kind of stopped the wristband operation and, "Oh yeah, I'll take one of those." And, standing there just, chomp, chomp, chomp on these little breakfast burritos. And it was just one of those little things where you just thought, this is just memorable in terms of the wackiness and the weirdness of the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, I bet it was exciting to see, though. I felt it from the TV, so I can't even imagine being there. That's cool.
It totally was. It totally was. And I think everybody realized that. There was an electricity. I'm a guy. And yet the first time Johnny Depp walked into the courtroom, I remember the hair standing up on the back of my neck.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
He has a magnetism. There is no question about it. It's not just he makes good movies and he's a nice guy or whatever you think about what's great about him. He has a magnetism. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. Yep. I think so too. Oh, that's amazing. Let's see here. Okay. So tell us everything. Let's start just whatever you want to tell us, starting with Johnny Depp. So he has a magnetism. Tell us anything you remember about being in courtroom near him, anything. Somebody asked, "How does he smell?" I'm like, I don't know if you got close enough to smell him. I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, I think he probably smells like cigarettes because I think he's a pretty heavy smoker. And I remember, there were times when his picture was taken out when they would take a break. I think he would go down a back elevator and go out into the courtyard and have a smoke. And, I wish he wouldn't do that, but it's not me. I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying we all know that's not the best habit in the world. Then again, he's apparently pulled himself together and gotten away from some things that are a lot worse than just tobacco cigarettes.
Including Amber Heard.
Yeah. But a very charismatic man, a very kind man. I made a comment to somebody that, oh my gosh, when he gets out of his Escalade and he walks over to the back of the courthouse, he stops and acknowledges the TV camera. He shakes hands with all of the sheriff's deputies that are standing there. And I said to somebody, gosh, seems nice, but it seems a little bit contrived. And they said, no, he has been that way his entire career. Wow. He has a Southern
hospitality,
politeness, whatever you want to say. Yeah. He is a genuinely appreciative man who realizes that he has been gifted a very unique lifestyle and he has not forgotten his roots. That came out very clearly in the trial as well. I will say too, when he walked into the courtroom, this was always funny. There was a door on either side of if I'm the judge, there was a door on the judge's left and a door on the judge's right. And he would go out that door on the side of the courtroom that was closest to where he sat, and was right in front of the jury as well. When he came in that door in the morning, he would kind of wave to the gallery, the vast majority of which was Johnny Depp supporters.
Yeah.
By the way, while I'm on that note, Amber Heard complained at one point that, there was a room full of Captain Jack Sparrows. No, there was no indication of anybody's bias, or nobody was in there wearing a pirate hat or an eye patch or any of that kind of foolishness. It was
Scissor
not.
hands. Yeah, sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It was a very respectful group. And they came out first thing in the morning, and of course nobody wants to. If you've gone through what you've gone through to get one of the 100 wristbands, boy, you're not going to screw around. When they come in the morning and they say, here are the rules: no hats, no gum chewing, no cell phones, no food. You can have water if you want. No talking, no outbursts. All the usual stuff that you would expect.
Sure.
But the guy said, you are allowed to wave.
Okay.
If you want to wave, you can wave. So when Johnny Depp walked in the courtroom, and he was walking in facing the gallery, the spectators, and he kind of just went like
I remember
that.
Yeah.
The entire room dislocated their shoulders to wave back, stand up and wave back at him in complete silence.
That's great.
Which is hilarious when you think about it. Normally it would be like, remember, everybody's seen the picture of the Beatles getting off the airplane for the first time in New York. That's what it was like, except it was complete silence. It was absolutely amazing.
But if that's the only way you're allowed to express yourself, then I'd be right there too. Like,
yes, yes,
that's what you do. Yeah.
yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
So very unusual.
Okay,
but fun.
Tell us about Amber Heard.
Interesting person.
Okay.
One thing I'll mention about Johnny Depp that some people might have noticed over the course of the trial is that when he started out, when he first was coming into the courtroom, his hair was completely down. It was kind of a mop sort of all around as he wears it. And at some point, fairly soon after the trial started, he started putting his hair up in a ponytail in the back, just so that he looked a little bit more kempt and neat. And I'm quite confident that was a strategic move on the part of his legal team. I suspect Ben Chu or Camille Vasquez or somebody said to him, hey, this is not a good look for you. And they're trial consultants, by the way, who look at all of these kinds of things. They're jury consultants who go into court and they watch, how are we doing with this jury? We were talking about Harry and settling this morning. One of the things I'm sure that would have happened if that had gone to trial, there would have been people in the courtroom that would have been looking at the judge. I don't know if there was going to be a jury in London or not, but they would have been looking at those people, trying to read people's facial expressions and all that kind of thing. So this is all very scientific. The relevance of all this to Amber Heard is Amber Heard, through the entire trial, looked very stoic, almost beyond stoic. She had a very hard look on her face.
I'm laughing because I pulled it. Yes, right there. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yes. Ask and you shall receive. She was wearing very masculine looking clothes, suits for the most part. There you go again. She had her hair up almost always in a in a braid of some sort. There's a picture of Johnny. Yeah, right. If you can go back. Yeah, that's the one where I think he's walking into the courtroom and he's acknowledging the people outside the gate. And then there is Amber walking and looking a little bit more tentative than Johnny did. She was booed relentlessly when she got out of her car. She came in the same way that he did, not at the same time, but when she got out of her car and walked in, boy, you could hardly hear yourself think. The booing was so loud. But and the cheering was so loud for Johnny Depp. There's Johnny Depp with his hair in the ponytail.
Yeah, I remember the shift, and I had the same thought. I thought, I bet you Camille told him to do that.
Well, it could be. But the other
Uh-huh.
thing I was going to say about Amber was,
Yes.
and again, I think this is uh, a missed opportunity on the part of Elaine and Ben
Mhm.
Rottenborn and her whole legal team. Here's a woman who's claiming that she has been abused and
Mhm.
mistreated and all of this kind of stuff. And she comes into court. What does she look like? She looks very tough and
Mhm.
very masculine in her clothing and very just, you know,
Right.
she just had this air about her that was very unfeminine.
Uh-huh.
And she did not look like a victim.
Mhm.
She went on, some people I'm sure will remember, she went on and I think, I don't know if it's NBC Dateline or one show, it was on
It's like Today's
NBC.
Show or something. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I
Yes,
do.
with Savannah Guthrie.
Yeah.
She looked stunning.
Uh-huh.
Her makeup was done beautifully. She had her hair kind of like yours is, Jen,
Uh-huh.
just sort of flowing off of her shoulders.
Uh-huh. Sure.
She looked like absolute picture of beauty. She looked like she was ready to have her picture taken for the front of a magazine such as, oh, Vanity Fair. Never mind. Um, but that's how good she looked.
Sure.
And I've talked to other attorneys, they all say the same thing. What a missed opportunity.
Mhm.
If she had looked, and by the way, the jury was predominantly men. I think I want to say 8 out of 10, I think there were 10 were men. She could have played to the crowd.
Mhm.
Um, for whatever reason, she did not do that.
Mhm.
Huge mistake in my book, and I think in the opinion of most of the other lawyers. Um,
Mhm.
and I pin that on Elaine, and in particular,
Uh-huh.
she should have known that Amber's look on TV. By the way, I'll hasten to point out this is a trial not only about damaging Johnny Depp's reputation, but also her public perception. The
Mhm.
whole world is watching this, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what's going on. Do we like Amber Heard or do we not like Amber Heard?
Uh-huh.
Again, ramifications far beyond Courtroom 55 in Fairfax County Circuit Court.
Uh-huh.
Worldwide attention, and she's still suffering from people's negative opinions of her to this very day.
Sure.
You remember what happened in Aquaman, the
Uh-huh.
Aquaman 2, all the controversy about that movie, and her participation in it, and are they going to cut her out completely because everybody hates her all of a sudden? All of
Mhm.
that stuff, yes, massive, massive ramifications, very poorly handled. Elaine should have done a better job with that.
Mhm.
Amber's agent should have done a better job. Her sister was in the courtroom for a lot of it.
You're right.
She
Yeah.
should have pointed out, again, we've talked so much about people with their friends and relatives and spouses and so boyfriends, girlfriends. Hey, um,
Uh-huh.
that's not a good look for you.
That
Nobody said anything to her.
scowl, constantly scowling and sitting there. I
Yes,
thought they say like seething or something, and I thought,
yes.
yeah.
And there was only one occasion
Uh-huh.
when something happened that was funny. There's always something, there are these brief moments of humor or
Sure.
irony, and everybody cracks up in court. There's only one occasion when she actually broke out in a real smile. It was the kind of smile that you can't help but
Yeah.
smiling. The
Uh-huh.
judge laughed, the sheriff's deputies laughed, everybody laughed. And I just thought, what a shame that she can't look that way
Mhm.
throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the jury as well. One thing I want to point out that I thought was very interesting was, you may recall during the trial, you had on the Depp counsel table in the front row, you had Ben Chew, lead
Mhm.
counsel, and then you had Johnny Depp, and then you had Camille.
Mhm.
Well, people started noticing, and there were all these memes coming out, and people, on Twitter just having a great old time with it, about this alleged romance that's going on between Johnny Depp and Camille Vasquez, because they were, as we were talking about earlier, they were having they had developed this kind of secret language that
Uh-huh.
they're kind of telling jokes to each other and passing notes, and not in an unprofessional way, but you could just
No,
tell.
We would
So
notice when we were covering, like, just a touch on the shoulder. Nothing, you wouldn't normally even pay attention, but you kinda start noticing, like, okay, yeah.
yes, yes.
Um,
So the interesting thing about it from again, from my perspective and from the perspective of other lawyers was, here's this guy who's being accused of doing some very, very monstrous
mhm.
things, being enraged and, hitting
Scary.
and
Yeah.
yes, all this stuff. And yet here's this man, well dressed, very mild mannered. He comes into court and he draws all day long. He had a whole packet of markers and no, and he had a drawing tablet of, not a tablet, but a,
Pad or something.
a
Uh-huh.
pad or a book
Uh-huh.
or something that he was just drawing stuff in because he's
Yeah.
very talented as an artist. And he's sitting next to this beautiful, competent woman in the form of
Mhm.
Camille Vasquez. How big a monster could he possibly be if this beautiful woman
Mhm.
is clearly connecting with him and is treating him like a close confidant and is
Yeah.
trusting him? And this was literally going on feet in front of the jury because the jury was on the Depp side of the courtroom.
Okay.
You never saw the jury, but they were sort of in the corner of the courtroom,
Uh-huh.
but literally 6 feet away from Camille and Johnny. And just watching this all unfold, very few people have talked about that aspect of the trial publicly, but I am very confident that
Mhm.
it made a difference in that trial. I'm
I
very
would
confident of
say
that.
I think that's such an interesting, yeah, you bring up such an interesting point and stuff I had buried in the back of my brain. And I really didn't think about, because the cameras were about there too, or around there. And
Yes,
so yeah, so I didn't even think about, I mean, I knew the jury was there, but I don't think about them because they weren't showing, it was,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
they
so
try very hard not to show the jury. That's inappropriate because the
I
jury hasn't
understand.
asked to be there. The jury's
Exactly.
there because they got a
Mhm.
letter in the mail that said, "Be here or else," or the
Yeah.
sheriff's going to come out and find you.
Uh-huh.
So, the least you can do is respect those people's privacy and
Absolutely.
buy them lunch and give them a pass to park in the garage, which
Uh-huh.
is basically what it boils down to. It's like, here, here's $10 for lunch, and
Mhm.
this will let you get your car out of the parking garage at no charge. But
But if you have to do jury duty, I'm picking that case all day long.
oh yeah, oh yeah. In fact,
Well,
well, it's interesting because there were two alternates that
mhm.
were in the jury box. And one of the last things that they did before the jury went out to deliberate was the Judge Azcarate, who was fantastic, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Cannot say enough good things about her. And we can talk about her in a second.
Yeah.
She opened an envelope and she said, I've got the numbers of the jurors in here that are alternates that I'm going to thank for their service. And this is the sort of catchphrase that they would like to thank and
Uh-huh.
dismiss. That you always hear that whenever there's a jury, because in voir dire, when they're choosing the jurors, I'd like to thank and dismiss, thank and dismiss.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, she said, I'd like to thank and dismiss the following two jurors because you have played a role as alternates from this point, but you're not going to be allowed to deliberate. She pulled the numbers out and she read them. There was a woman in the front row of the jury who was visibly upset. I think she was genuinely disappointed that she was not chosen to be a juror who actually got to go back and deliberate.
Mhm.
And I remember she had this pad of paper and she took this pad of paper and smacked it down in her lap and was like, oh, can't believe, I've got this great opportunity
Uh,
and it's just been yanked out from underneath me. So
oh,
again,
that's
just,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Huh.
yeah,
Because you think any other scenario, it's like, "Oh, thank God I can get out of here, an hour early or something."
right, right, right.
Not this one. Huh.
You asked me as well, since we're talking about the jury, you had asked
Mhm.
me a question about um, the way that Amber would
Like,
receive a question. She would
yeah.
hear a question.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if I'm sitting in the witness box
Mhm.
in that courtroom, the lawyer speaking to me would be over to my left, but the jurors would be right here to my right. And she would receive the question from the attorney, and then she would immediately turn to her right and address the jurors.
It's jarring. Yeah.
And people started talking about that.
Uh-huh.
There's a fine line that she did not locate
Mhm.
between doing what she did
Sure.
and making the jurors feel like they're completely left out.
Yeah.
The way I've always understood it to be most effective
Mhm.
is to think about it in terms of I'm sitting in the witness box, the lawyer examining me or cross-examining me is standing over there asking me questions. I'm having a conversation back and forth with that attorney.
Mhm.
But it's like standing at a party in a circle of people. If two people are talking, you don't just talk back and forth.
Right.
Sometimes when you answer a question, you make eye contact with the other people that are standing. And you know what I'm saying? And I've always
Absolutely.
understood that it's very effective to take that approach.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you're clearly having a conversation back and forth here,
Uh-huh.
but these people are really important, and you want them to feel like that they're included in the conversation.
Yes.
So, you might respond halfway to the question, and then you might just turn over here and say and blah 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
That's the way you really ought to do it.
Sure.
And she just
She
messed that
ran with
up
it. Yeah.
in the worst way. And it's very easy for me to sit here and for other lawyers to sit here and talk about that,
Mhm.
but because it's hard. It's hard. I
Sure.
mean, you know,
It's not natural to turn your body, I think, when you're talking, but then
right.
Elaine should have told her.
Well, she was clearly told you need to make sure and not ignore the jury, but she
Sure.
she turned it into this very mechanical. Okay, I've heard the question. I'm now going to
Mhm.
start to talk, so I'm going to immediately stare at these people, and
But it's uncomfortable.
it's
Elaine
totally
should have
uncomfortable.
said after the first break, "Hey, Amber, thanks for listening, but maybe tone it down."
Yeah, I'll tell you an interesting story. Also, as far as Amber is concerned, there was a day in the court proceedings when Amber came in. It was not a day when all of her hair was braided up, but she had a piece of hair.
Mhm.
It was more than a piece. It was like a chunk of hair, for lack of a better term,
Uh-huh.
that came off of her head and basically came down right across her nose and basically down to her mouth. And every time she would answer a question, she would take her
Uh-huh.
finger and flip it out of the way, or
Uh-huh.
she would do one of these
Yeah.
numbers. I saw Ben Rottenborn
Uh-huh.
in the hallway, and I said, I don't want to tell you how to deal with your client.
Mhm.
I said, that hair in her face is so annoying that, and I'm being dramatic here, and I didn't
Sure.
say it in those terms. I mean, I was very respectful to him. Um, but I said, listen, that hair in her face is so annoying. I have no idea why I said, just driving people up the wall.
Yeah.
Anyway, they came back from the break.
Uh-huh.
She had a bobby pin in
Oh,
that piece of hair.
that's smart because even if she had a good point, the jury's not gonna be listening. You're just thinking, "What is she doing over and over with her face and her hair?"
Well,
Yeah.
it's like
Uh-huh.
being on a date with somebody when you're
Mhm.
sitting two people at a table and this other person. I mean, I just say this from a man's perspective. If you're sitting there with a woman and she's constantly doing this, it's like,
Mhm.
I'm trying to talk to you, I'm trying to communicate with you, but I
Mhm.
can't because every time you touch your hair, I'm totally, the vibe is just gone,
The vibe is gone, that's right, and it
you
shows that
know?
her focus is not on what you're saying, it's, "Look at
Right.
me." Yeah.
And people, I mean, literally, people in the comments tell me I'm wrong,
Uh,
that is not an issue. I want to hear it if you agree or disagree
mhm.
with that, little bit of just, again, sort of practical advice of how
I'm
to.
somebody with a lot of hair, I get it, you have to leave it alone, I have to ignore
Yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah, 'cause it
So,
becomes annoying, I get it, yeah.
yeah, just weird stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, Again, part of client management that is so, um, in some cases, apparently underappreciated.
Yeah.
You had also asked me about my encounter with Elaine.
Yes, tell me, tell me.
So there was a day when I managed to screw things up in terms of the little subterfuge, and I did not get my piece of my cherished piece of masking tape or duct tape,
Uh-huh.
which was okay because I thought, well, that'll give me an opportunity to go around to the back of the courthouse and watch Johnny and Amber arrive in person, and so on and so forth. And I can just I had made some friends, and I knew I was going to see those people at lunch, and you could watch the case on your cell phone because it was being streamed, and you could also, there was an overflow courtroom where they had a big screen set up where you could sit and watch and so on. So on that day, I thought, okay, well, too bad for me, I didn't get in. I'll just walk around to the back of the courthouse, and I'll walk around the end and come out the back.
Mm-hmm.
I walked around the end of the courthouse, and on the sidewalk coming toward me to go in the entrance to the courthouse, which was on the end, sort of out of sight, out of mind, who did I encounter coming up the sidewalk? I ran into Elaine and some members of her legal team. And what I wanted to tell her, there was a young woman who was there at the trial, and I actually kind of felt bad for her because she was clearly an Amber supporter, and I believe that she was early 20s, and I believe that she had suffered some domestic kind of abuse. So she felt like she was a kindred spirit with Amber. She had brought some stuff. I think she had come from Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is a long way to come.
Yeah.
And an expensive place to come from and so forth. She had brought some little handmade trinkets, keepsakes. I don't even know how to describe them. They were just little
tchotchkes, yeah.
Little tchotchkes and little pieces of artwork about the importance of being a survivor and staying strong and all that. I mean, it's just, it's nice sentiment.
Sure.
Well, she was having some trouble getting herself into the courtroom because she hadn't quite figured out that there was a system, let alone gotten herself involved in it. So I saw Elaine and I said, hi, Elaine, I just want to mention there's a young woman here. She's got all this stuff. She's come from Minneapolis. She's very anxious to get these things to Amber. I said, would you mind? I said, I'm sure she will be out in the hall. And I kind of described her. And I said, if you see her in the hall, please somehow, I think it would be nice if you made an effort to get that stuff from her and deliver it to Amber. And she was very gracious about it. She said, oh, that's really nice. I'll do that. And
that's nice.
Anyway, one thing I noticed was that Elaine was towing this very large cart of boxes of legal documents. They have what they call banker's boxes.
Yeah.
Elaine's towing this cart of all these boxes. And I noticed when I walked away from her that the back of her head was wet. And I don't know if it was from sweat or if it was just that she had gotten out of the shower and had not really completely blow dried the back of her head. But all I could think of was, here's this woman coming into court, clearly not ready for prime time. And she's going to try to do battle with these really, really good lawyers on the other side. I said, that is no way to go into this type of a situation. Clearly something had gotten her off track. And if I remember correctly, that was the same day that Camille had totally chewed her apart with objections when she had tried to ask a question, and Camille just kept standing, objection, sustain. So, again, it's just the importance of it's like anything else. If you need to be there at 9:00 and it's going to take you half an hour, what time do you leave? 8:00.
There you go.
You build in an extra margin of error, and it was clear that she was not. I don't know if she did that every day, but it's just the way it was. Let me just say something about Elaine too. Amber's side of the case was paid for, I believe, if I recall correctly, by State Farm Insurance, because there was an insurance policy.
Yeah, I kind of remember this.
There are doctors, and then there are doctors. The person who graduates first in their class at medical school and the person who graduates last in their class at medical school both wear a white coat and they're both called doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not disparaging Elaine. What I am saying is, though, that State Farm Insurance, I believe, hired Elaine because they knew that she would do a competent, adequate job. She was good enough to fulfill the obligation that State Farm had to Amber Heard.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Depp, by contrast, hired a money is no object legal team. They were the best of the best.
Yeah.
Ben Chew had previously represented Cher, the singer. He had represented a whole bunch of other people. Shannon Curry, they flew her in from Los Angeles, where her practice is, to be an expert witness on behalf of Johnny Depp. Elaine, Dr. Spiegel.
I knew you were going to say that.
Again, I'm not trying to disparage him, but he is not
character. Yeah.
he is not in the class of Shannon Curry by a country mile. Not only was she supremely competent, she was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And she had a presence in the courtroom. I remember sitting there. I was on the end and she walked in and walked past me because she had been sitting out in the hallway. Yes. And I just thought,
wow,
there goes what Alec Baldwin's wife. She was in the
Kim Basinger.
Yes. Yes. I thought that is a slightly shorter version of Kim Basinger. She was wearing a jacket that was kind of flowing behind her. I mean, just talk about a presence. I mean, is it fair to say she's very sexy? I mean, it's just
gorgeous. I said I had a girl crush on her. Yeah, absolutely. She's great.
Yes. And again, who is she sitting 6 feet away from? Jerry Box full of men.
Oh, yeah.
Again. And anyway, Dr. Spiegel.
I have him too. My boyfriend.
Yes. He was technically competent on paper. He's licensed at what he's done, at what he does. He's been at it quite a while. He had apparently a good reputation, but he tried to tangle with Wayne Dennison, talking about, is it appropriate for a person in your position to give a medical diagnosis or a psychiatric diagnosis about somebody that you haven't examined? All of a sudden, he had to admit that, he had gotten caught up on that a little bit. And so he was back on his heels the entire rest of the time. And as we all saw, he tried to engage in this. He tried to out-lawyer Wayne Dennison.
He was
combative. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. Wayne Dennison is a force to be reckoned with. He also had a huge presence in the courtroom. So that was really interesting to see that kind of go off the rails. I was going to mention Ben Chew as well.
Yes. Tell us about Ben.
Really interesting man. And as I said, I know he's a friend. I saw him a couple of months ago.
So real quick, you didn't explain how you know Ben. Tell us how you know Ben.
He and I went to the same high school.
Okay. Gotcha.
And we ran in, and I had not entirely recalled how I knew him, but I saw him in the hall outside of court, and I asked him, where'd you go to high school? I'm class of whatever. Oh, I'm class of whatever. So we kind of hit it off. I'll tell you the first thing that impressed me about him. You may recall in the trial, there were people who were bringing Johnny Depp food to eat. They were bringing him gummy bears. And they were bringing him jelly beans, jelly bellies in particular. At some point during the trial, I had been in, I don't know if it was Marshall's or TJ Maxx, or I think it's TF Maxx in the UK.
TK
You know,
Maxx.
they have that food section there. I looked, lo and behold, in the food section is this tray of Jelly Belly jelly beans. It's like this wide and
Uh-huh.
this deep, and it's that tall, and it cost, it was like $15 or something. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to grab that and give it to Johnny or whoever, or give it to one of the lawyers and see if they like it. Anyway, I ran into Ben Chu in the hallway and I said, "Hey, got a present for you."
Oh.
And he took it. He was so gracious about it.
Oh.
And then he saw me in the hallway later on, like 10 minutes later, and he still had this thing he had like files under one arm and this box of jelly beans under the other arm. And he saw me and he made eye contact with me again, and he thanked me a second time.
Wow.
And I thought, that guy's a class act. He really is. He's a really interesting character. Everybody gave him a hard time because he has glasses that he wore sometimes that look like Elvis Costello. If you've ever seen Elvis Costello, these big, thick plastic rimmed glasses. And that was fun he also, believe it or not, when I've seen him casually outside of court, well, when he was in court, he always had a very interesting tie on, which a lot of men really pride themselves on, having an interesting, this is a very sort of, it's a nice tie, but it's not a Ben Chu tie. He designs his own clothes.
Wow.
He goes to stores, and I don't know exactly how he does it, but the last time I saw him, he was wearing a sort of a burgundy pair of blue jeans that had patches sewn on the legs that were like paisley patterns of fabric swatches. And I said, "Ben, where do you get this stuff? I don't see these. Where do you shop? I don't see this stuff where I go." And he goes, "Well, a lot of it, I just, I see things that I like, and I have a tailor, and I just go and I have the guy, here, sew this patch on the left thigh of my, so that's how he rolls."
Wow. Huh.
And more power to him.
Sure.
The interesting thing, though, is, and I was going to make this point before, when you sign on to represent a client in a case like that Johnny Depp case, or when you're a client and you're having to choose a good lawyer to help you out, it's the equivalent of getting in a car with somebody in Miami and driving to Anchorage, Alaska. Literally 5,000 miles in a car with somebody.
Ooh. Not many people you want to do that with.
That's what it boils down to. And you better be on the same wavelength as the other person in the car, or you're going to be at each other's throats in no time at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's a really good analogy. So when people talk about Johnny Depp being a very gracious man and being a very kind man and being a very sensitive man, I look at Ben Chu and I say, Ben Chu is the best evidence that I can accumulate to know how Johnny Depp is wired up and what makes that guy tick.
Okay.
Because they have to match, and if they don't, it's all hell is going to break loose. And incidentally, I mean, to go back to the Amber and Elaine situation,
I was just laughing, thinking, yeah. God.
Yeah. There were allegations or there were not allegations, there were rumors about these screaming matches that apparently took place. I don't want to say exactly how I have the information, but I was told that those stories are true.
Okay. That was one of my questions from the flock. That's interesting.
Yes. Okay. I heard through some very reliable sources that those were within the confines of the trial atmosphere, that those stories were true, and that there were really some major knockdown, drag out arguments. And I mean, there's kind of more to it that I don't want to get into because it's probably it's not kind to the people who are involved. And I don't want to seem like I'm piling on anybody.
No, it's okay. Yeah. No,
But
we
I
could
mean, I think,
probably guess. Yeah.
well, I think there was a lot of anger. I think there were a lot of tears.
Mm.
Um, I think it was very, very hard. And again, Amber was not, Elaine was probably one of a very, very few options that Amber had, if she had any options at all, to
Mhm.
represent her. Um, and again, Johnny Depp, you heard all the stories about, the lawyers going to Johnny Depp's house for dinner. And I mean, and that came out in the Shannon Curry
Oh my
context as
god,
well.
that's why I was laughing. I know. Elaine would
Yeah.
not let that go. Yeah. Guys, that's it for part 1. Thank you so much, John, for sitting down and taking my questions and being so wonderful. I really sincerely appreciate that. That's so kind of you. I cannot wait for you guys to see part 2. So much more juicy stuff to come. And if you are a member of Patreon, he records for that too and tells us some behind the scenes stuff. So if you're not a member of Patreon, go check out Patreon. But thank you, John, for being so generous with your time and wonderful and taking all of our questions. And guys, I can't wait to bring you part 2 tomorrow. So check back for that. I hope you have the best day and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.